Please get that to me as soon as possible. I had every intention of having them back to you today, but again, we're KELPA testing right now, and I feel like every extra second of my life is listening to KELPA tests, and I completely got, and they're really fun. Has anybody ever graded KELPA tests? Isn't it awesome?
They're so much fun.
Elementary is hilarious. I don't grade them, but my ESL teacher was one of my kiddos. She's like, "Can you just come listen to
Oh,
them?"
they're awesome.
And he's
They
talking,
are.
and he's like saying something in a total normal voice, and then all of a sudden he goes, "It's in the bushes. It's in the bushes," and like whispers, and we're like, "What is happening? Where did this come from?"
Oh, I love it when they whisper.
We were laughing so hard because it was like some secret person was in the bushes, and we were like, "What is
They get
happening?"
into their stories, which is awesome. I mean, it makes that that. I mean, for me, it just helps me justify my score. But yeah, so I was gone the day we were supposed to grade the in-service day. I was sick that day, and so I've been desperately trying to make up all my KELPA tests. So I apologize. I did print them all, and they told me I didn't have to print stuff. If you guys don't want it, you can just trash it, but I cannot grade on the computer. By the time I get done trying to write myself notes and then type you guys notes, I am printing everything. I will try and get you some feedback this week before, because I know your next lesson plan is due next week, and I know it probably would help you to have some feedback before you started your second lesson. So I will try and get that done as soon as possible and get that feedback to you guys. And so, without further ado, we will jump in. We are talking about strategies right now. Okay, this is methods, so we're talking about different strategies in terms and in relationship to the SIOP model. So we left off last class. We were talking about concept circles. Excuse me. Oh, I just opened a Mountain Dew, so. Excuse me. HOTS. Thank you for looking it up. HOTS is what I had on mine. I think that's why I was confused. Yours says critical thinking. So did you guys all get my examples? You can see how they're just a little bit different. It used to say HOTS on there, now it says critical thinking, and that really threw me off when Christy asked me about that. I was like, I don't know. I don't even know what this is. So HOTS, higher order thinking skills. It's how are you going to challenge them to think at a higher level. Again, if you want to put questions on there that you're going to ask the kids, that's fine. If you just tell me how you're going to challenge them, that's fine as well. Okay. The rubric is in your syllabus. I think it says look below, but it's actually pages 5 and 6, or what the rubric is. All right, so moving on, we're going to talk today about some more strategies. Semantic feature analysis. I did this, we talked about the Civil War. It worked great. We were talking about the North and the South. And so we filled in Union soldiers and Confederate soldiers, and we created a semantic analysis chart. And then you could give them sentence stems, right? Blank and blank are similar because neither blank nor blank have. Blank and blank are very dissimilar. The bigger the chart, the bigger the concepts. Okay, but it worked really well for that too. I feel like this is an elementary strategy anyway. Do you guys do this with with just your basic words? Do you do anything similar to this when you're learning about different concepts? Or is this really truly ESOL?
I don't use it tons in 5th grade.
No.
How does it work?
Is that like if you have a dog? Yes, they have.
Yeah, so you have your comparing. So whatever you're comparing, so you got your 3 animals, right? And then you have your different categories. So
I think we talk about it. I don't do like a chart with them.
Okay. But it's nice, and again, when you get into, I like to use it with concepts more than probably just, these are words.
Yeah, I think that's what kind of like.
Okay. So if you're doing it with a concept, you're still giving them that structure to build their sentence with, right? You could do it between states. You could do it between.
So that'd be like I teach the colonies.
Yeah.
Like, because I did that with like the northern colonies, middle colonies, southern
Absolutely.
colonies, agriculture, and like the different types.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yep.
I was looking at it as like the words. I'm like, that's not fifth grade.
Yeah.
No.
And that's why I say, and so if you're a language learner and you're trying
Yeah.
to teach them basic words, okay. But like, yeah, with my newcomers, we used it for when we were learning about the Civil War. We talked about the North and the South. But yeah, colonialism, perfect. Multiple meanings. This, I feel like, is one of the areas that these kids probably need the most support. This is a game that I play with mine. I went and I found these old, they're like geometric shapes. I'll give you all too many pages. Oh, just two. Okay. And I like literally just wrote on the little blocks, but you can do it with paper. Multiple meaning puzzles. Newcomers, I love doing this. So if you flip to the very last, the back page, it kind of gives you an idea what the shapes look like. And you can build a bigger shape, like a bigger concept. But, you know, you're building triangles or whatever shape you want them to build. But you know what I'm talking about, those little geometric shapes, and they create puzzles and you can put them all together. They've got them at the PTR, and you just buy the shapes that you want.
Are those called?
Yeah, tangrams.
What are they?
Tangrams.
Tamgrams.
Elementary, we have boxes
Of them. My mom taught elementary school, and that's where I had got a whole bunch, and then like I said, you can get them at the PTR. But again, you put your your word on the bigger piece, and then you've got your multiple meanings. Why the English language is so hard to learn, right? The bandage was wound around the wound. These have different sounds, but the concept, you know, you would have the word wound, and then you would have or wound, and you would have your different words. The farm was used to produce produce. The dump was so full that it had to refuse more refuse. Okay? If you just Google multiple meanings, they break it down into elementary or primary, secondary. This is really hard for our kids. This is really hard for anyone. Especially when you start looking at literature and college level textbooks. They are so ambiguous. And the kids they're like, what does this mean? Okay. But you can find these all over the place. You can give them these sentences and then ask them to write what the different definitions mean. Okay, which word do you see twice? Have them mark the text, circle it, underline it, highlight it, or whatever. Now, what do these two words, write the definitions for these two words? Because this is one of the things, when they go look up a word in a dictionary, which word do they pick? Which definition do they pick? They pick the first definition.
Or the shortest.
Or the shortest, yeah, they'll be like, oh, this one only has 3 words, right? So that's what they're looking for. When you ask them to define a vocabulary word, they're not always looking for the correct word. So these are really great strategies to have them, okay, so you see the word twice. You need to define the word twice. What do these two different definitions mean? Like I said, I've got envelopes with my multiple meaning words, and they love to play with them too. I mean, there's just the kinesthetics of being able to touch. Okay. Teach word parts or word maps. We'll talk, when we get into linguistics, we'll look at this as well. In and un is not something that a lot of our L's will hear. I mean, it's no difference when they tell you, they'll say this, miss, and you'll say it, and they're like, no, say it like this. I'm saying it the same way you are, right? I had a Yesenia in class, and I guess I never said her name correctly. To me, it sounded like she was saying Yesenia, but she said I never said it right. I'm like, I don't know how else to enunciate it differently. And so, invisible, undesirable. They don't hear the difference between in and un. if you've ever spelled a word to a kid and had them write the wrong letter down, especially vowels, right? A, E, I, O, U, ah, eh, be. So you say A, apple, A, and they write E. No A, so they write I, E, right? And so you have to give them the letter. They sound different. So in and un to them may not sound different. but all three, in, un, and a, right, mean opposite. Invisible means not visible. Inedible means not edible. Undesirable means not desirable. So they'll say, why is it not indesirable instead of undesirable?
We hear that a lot in fifth grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that's a huge fifth grade. We do prefixes, suffixes, root words, and it just blows their mind because they're like, oh wait, no, I thought in meant.
Yes.
No, yeah, it does too.
Yeah. And so you get kids, we get kids who have never had fifth grade language arts, right? And so this, they know it because they've seen it, but they don't know why.
I teach sophomore tower time, and we did
Prefixes and suffixes.
prefixes and suffixes, and I have 10th graders who have been here their entire high school career who don't know the difference between them.
And I'll be honest, there's words I will have to stop and go, is that in or un? You say it to yourself like 3 times. How do you spell that? So, or asymptomatic and asexual. Those are words that are like, so is it opposite or does it mean, right? So, breaking these words down when you see them, if you come across them, having that ready or stopping when you come to these words, stop and go over them with the kids. And then word maps. We do word maps a lot with our vocabulary, and they just learned in my classes to automatically do these things. And again, it's very similar to the links or the 4 squares that we did last time. You've got an adjective, so you're describing antonym, synonym. I like this because it gives you the feeling, like how do you feel when you see this picture? So all we're doing here is building their vocabulary and broadening it. But keeping in mind, the English language is very ambiguous, and we want to give them something to hold on to. Linear arrays, another great strategy. I think, again, I use it more with concepts than words as a social studies teacher, but giving them 2 ends and having them fill in, you're going to give them a word bank, of course, but you can give them an idea of where to start. So minute and year, right? You're on 2 ends, so you're building a relationship. There's a website that will also that gives you lots of great word groupings to put into linear arrays, so you can see the connection. We did this the very beginning with my newcomers. We went over minutes and hours and years, and we talked about the difference between how many days are in a week, how many days are in a month, so that they understand the difference between week and month. How many hours are in a day, how many minutes are in an hour. So giving them those terms and letting them so that they can see the progression and the relationship. Questions about that? Ascending or descending? You could flip it around on them, freak them out. Wait a minute. And it will, because you'll put here first, and then they'll mix up the order. So linear arrays. Talk a mile a minute. This I like with charades or what's the game show where you have the word and they have to say
Heads up.
Yeah, heads up, password. Same thing. You're trying to get them to speak as quickly as possible and for as long as possible. I might have that. No, this was another one that went with the, sorry. This is the multiple meaning nonsense structures. This goes back to the multiple meaning words. Sorry, I have to give this to you too. Again, guys, I'm just trying to give you guys strategies. So when you're building your assignments, sometimes you're looking for something that fits into a certain category. Okay, so whatever your vocabulary words are, you can do vocabulary, you can do concepts, it's great for reviews. For your L's, I would give them words, have them use their actual vocabulary sheets so that they can have that to reference back to. So if their vocabulary word is democracy, they can use their vocabulary sheet to look at the word. So they're not, because it's easy to get frustrated when you're trying to speak fast, speak quickly, because you're giving them a time limit because you're trying to encourage fluency. And so sometimes that can stress them out a little bit. So there's nothing wrong with giving the person who's reading, if the word's democracy, if I have my vocabulary sheet up and I'm trying to get the other person to say democracy, it could give them just that arsenal or tools. Okay. Talk about in a minute. Personal dictionaries and portable word walls. Our kids a lot of times carry just note cards like on a binder thing. It looks like a 3-ring binder, but it's just the one. And they'll have color coordinated for different classes. You can use the A through Z or dots chart form. Same thing. They can use this for different units. So for like social studies, when we're doing different units, we have in US 1, maybe we start with a World War I dictionary, and then we have in the Gilded Age dictionary, and then we have Westward Expansion dictionary. You can have them set their dictionaries up however you want. If they set it up, then the idea is that they're creating it in a way that's organized that they can access it very quickly. Word sorts. Found a cool website. I use this when we get into primary sources, especially when we're looking at documents that are really heavy for the kids. So this is just one website. It's you guys ever use Read Write Think? You can have them log on, and they can print their words. Where's it at? Word sort. Begin. You can have so again, when you're working with the vowels, A, B, or A, E, I, O, U, they're making that connection. You can have them sort the words based on the sounds. Sack, sap, hack. Bell warmer or bell ringer. If you've got a kid who's like done with everything and you want them to just practice, you can have them practice that. You can also just give them the words, a pile of words on note cards. Same concept.
I do that with my spelling words because they have like a syllable that part says the same. But I like this.
You can have them sort. That was sorting based on sound. Now I would have them sort. Mine would be the far with my social studies, right? I would have them sort based on, again, the North versus the South. We did one on immigration. We did a word sort with immigration. We talked about the difference between Irish immigrants and Italian immigrants and Chinese immigrants in the 1880s. What was life like? Where did they immigrate to? How did they get here? So you could create your categories however you want. With government, with spelling patterns, we start looking at, and it can be simple, it doesn't have to be anything complicated. We talk about ideologies, having them sort ideologies based on, communism, democracy, socialism, fascism, ideologies versus economic systems. You could do anything. Anytime you're asking them to put the word into a category, you're making them think about it, and you're making them think about it differently. Okay. Morphological families. If you come across a word that they give you creator, creative, it helps if you give them, if you're trying to explain creation, if you explain what a creator is and what it means to be creative, sometimes, again, you're helping build that background. This is called WordSift. This is amazing. But this is probably, you would have to be pretty intentional with your vocabulary terms. But if you go to WordSift, and it's actually linked on your website, or on the PowerPoint. Come on, it won't let me go up. I'll just go back. So when you open it, it looks like this, and you have a passage. So I did To Kill a Mockingbird. We read excerpts from To Kill a Mockingbird in our government class. This isn't a section that I would necessarily read, but you can see. So I cut out like 300 words and 382 words. This is basically beginning of chapter 2. So I hit sift, and it creates kind of a Wordle. So you can see the words that are used multiple times. Cloud style. About short words, A to Z. So same concept behind the Wordle. The words that are bigger are words that are used more often. And then I can pick the word that I want. So if any words jump out at me that I think maybe they may not know. Schoolyard was used twice. I can click on it and I can come down here and it will, well, that one doesn't give me a great example. Let's try a different one.
Miss.
Where is it?
School's fine.
School.
Yeah.
Oh, miss. Miss is used multiple times. So, it creates this word sort, and it blows up, and it shows you all the different ways. It's not wanting to cooperate over there on that board. So you can see the word miss, and then it expands it out. So miss could be escape. Oh, that's an extension, escape. Fail to experience. This is a verb, fail to perceive. This is fail to reach. To be without, lack. So it shows you all the different ways that this word could be interpreted or used. That one's like really big. Look at, some of them have like just, that's still huge too. Some of them don't have corner. Yeah, still huge. Noon. There's one that's not so terribly big. So it shows you all the different ways that this word, can you guys see it down there? I don't know why up there on this screen it's so weird. So different ways that noon, the word noon could be used. And then you can click on it and it gives you down here where the word's at. So you could say instead of noon, I think it's kind of cool if you're typing too. I think it would be excessive to come back and use this every time, but you could use this as almost like a thesaurus. So, does that make sense? Most of these words, and you can just have them go through. Do you know what all these words mean? And if they come to one that they don't know, have them, highlight it. I don't know why I looked, it didn't show up. And they can go back 60 minutes, hour, so there's the abbreviation, 60 minutes, time of day, so on. All the different ways you could sort the word, basically. And you can just put one word in too, like I just looked up automobile. Okay. And so as you add the different affixes, you can see how, so you would have a conversation about how you add. So from the word create, right, creation, so you add T-I-O-N, how does it change the word? You add O-R, how does it change the word? Top 10 affixes, we'll go over this again in linguistics, or you'll go over this again in linguistics. If they've got the root word, and again, if you go back to, you said, Brittany, in your curriculum, it already gives you the Latin root word, so that's huge. If they know the Latin root word and they can add the prefix to it, they're going to have the language is going to be very easy to translate for them. These are the ones that they're going to see the most. And again, see, it's confusing. Not, in, with that, within. That's, and in is hard. It's hard to hear the difference between that. There was another one that we were talking about. Again. Okay, again and plural. That is one that they struggle with, the difference between, again, like multiple, repeat. Repeat does not necessarily mean multiple. Okay, so again, you going back to your dots chart, we could, if we had more time, we'd spend time going over this. But again, just to review this, you're adding, so you can add in your vocabulary. You can break up into groups and add vocabulary. You can do it individually. You can give them a set number. I want you to pick 4 words. I want you to find 4 words. I want you to find 5 words, 2 words, whatever. And have them fill in the vocabulary that they know. And then using a different color, have them work with a partner. You can have them do it with Post-it notes. You can have them do it with, you can give them the words and have them, where do they fit? Because for some of them, you can give them a list of vocabulary words. Put them in the right box. Can you match the correct sounds? Can you match the correct consonants? So that they're in the correct box. Then you can go back and add your focus vocabulary. So it doesn't, it's supposed to slide in, but so depending on what you're talking about, here you have Ben Franklin, so I don't know what
That's
the topic.
5th grade.
This
Has
is-
to be 5th or 4th grade because we do a full Ben
We
Franklin
do
unit.
we do Ben Franklin in 1st grade.
In 1st grade
Yeah.
too.
No,
And
4th and
we've
5th
had
grade.
predicament solution later in K four.
Those are your words you would use in
We-
1st grade?
That's what they give us now. A
Wow.
lot of the times we say nope.
That
Do
would
they even
be,
know the word predicament?
no? Do they know the word predict?
We had that one.
Okay.
We did have that one.
That's one
I've
my,
actually gotten really good because, with reading comprehension, that's one that we use a lot. Like, what do you predict?
yeah. That's one my, else, especially the Spanish speakers, predict. Predict and inference. It's hard to explain what it means without using the word. How do you predict? So you predict what this means. You have to,
Yes.
You use your good information and you're a detective.
yeah,
Our definition is what you think will happen. And then we come up with like actions.
for it.
Yeah.
So, so you can see they've written in the words that they know, and then your, what do we call them? Your academic vocabulary, then you're going to add in, you can have them Post-it noted on there, add the academic vocabulary in where you would have it. That's what they've done in the left, where they've just added it in. Then on the right, you can also add it and they've actually drawn, right, they're drawing, can you guys see how they're doing this? This is how, more like, this is how we teach it more so than this, with the post-it notes or the putting it over. But you add your academic vocabulary on the side, predicament, solution, haste, and then you're literally making physical connections to the words that they already have. Their vocabulary, their prior knowledge, they're making physical connections to your academic vocabulary. And they can make those connections to each other's words too, because you can see the 3 different colors. So 3 different people worked on this particular dots chart, and they kept adding. So they're making connections to each other's words as well. And that, again, from day one, I've said this, the more you can connect to what they know, any kid, that's just good practice, but when you're teaching this second language, any academic vocabulary, any academic background that you can grab onto and bring out is going to help them and help you so that you are not spinning your wheels. Okay, so examples of dots charts that they've used with from an essay or a reading. It's hard to read, I know. So you've had, you've given them their story, whatever it is that they're reading, and they've written a summary or they've written an essay about it, and all they've done here is they're making those connections. So they're going through and you're marking the text and you're having them highlight the keywords and they're putting the keywords into their dots. This is called word mining. Nope. You can also, for listening skills, I do opposite of this with my newcomers, where I actually give them, it's more of a closed reading, I guess, where they're filling in the words as they're listening. But it would be great to take those words that they've filled in and then have them put them in the dots chart. That's something I hadn't thought of, but that would be a great thing to do. Again, reinforcing that vocabulary. And again, the dots chart does not have to be, you don't have to say, only give me vocabulary words. It can be anything that they can make a connection to. Okay, so we'll watch, is the middle okay for everybody? The preschool is like very preschool. But I would encourage you guys, if you have time, to go back. So we're extending understanding.
My name is Katie Langloy, and I teach 7th grade at Maury Middle School. It's an urban school and it's right in the middle of Denver. Our school as a whole, and my classroom represents this, also is about a third white, a third black, a third Hispanic. Oftentimes those kids are English language learners, and I teach 7th grade language arts.
Everyone in your group is going to get a card, either A, a B, a C, or a D.
So in today's lesson, vocabulary that we reviewed was all thematically linked to the Gettysburg Address. This unit on understanding language starts with the Gettysburg Address, and the first time they read it, they don't know what it's about. It's like reading Shakespeare for the first time, where it's English, but it doesn't really sound like it. And then after a few times, they really get it. And then, today was our last day of the unit, and they're really dissecting the complex vocabulary words.
Person A is going to read, it's basically a clue. Everyone has a clue.
They were in groups of 4, and they each had a different clue as to what the vocabulary word was. So the first student had the first letter of the word. The second student had how many syllables it was. The third student had the last letter of the word, and then the last student had the definition. And then together, they came up with the word.
We'll do one together. Alexis, can you read the clue for me for what it says for number 7?
The word starts with the letter P.
P? P. Okay. So Lolly, will you read the B clue for me?
Yeah, it says this word has four. Yeah.
We don't know how many letters it is, but it has 4 syllables. All right, Jericho, do you have the C clue?
The last letter in this word is in.
Is what?
In.
N. Okay, great. So, Jaleel, please read the D clue.
Something that is suggestive for consideration.
Let's think as a class, what word having to do with the Civil War and the Gettysburg Address starts with a P, ends in an N, has 4 syllables, and is something that is brought up for consideration? I know you don't have a copy of the address. I want you to be able to think of these words from the themes and the ideas that we've been talking about over the past few days.
Having now read the text several times through different activities, it's time for them to extend their understanding. And as they do that, they engage in a series of activities. But the one that we see in the video is the last activity. And it is an activity that most teachers right now would find peculiar at the end of the unit.
They're dissecting the vocabulary after we've done the unit, which is something that's different for me. Before, I'd always pre-taught vocabulary to English language learners, and so that when they encountered the complex vocabulary in the text, that they would be able to understand it, and it was definitely a new way of thinking for me.
We read the background about Lincoln, we read the background about the Battle of Gettysburg, we read the background about the Civil War. I'm hoping that you can get it from that. Alexis?
Is it like proposition?
Great, absolutely. So
We begin with big ideas, and we begin with engaging students in the discussion of these ideas, and then we still pay attention to vocabulary. So at the end of a lesson, we come back and make sure that students have crafted through the multiple participations a workable definition of key terms.
does anyone remember the sentence off the top of their head that uses the word proposition? You think you have it, Alexis?
Is it like the proposition that all men are created equal?
Yes,
or something?
exactly. So
Rather than beginning with the bits and pieces, which will never amount to a solid whole, we begin with the big ideas first, with the big understandings about language, and then we end with bits and pieces, because we also want them to have proficiency in the forms of language.
So what's
Okay. So that's just one of the strategies. Again, you go through when you have time, if you're looking for strategies for vocabulary strategies, and think of something that you might be interested in doing. That's what these videos are showing you. But I really like that one. I'd never used it before. That was new since I took this class. But I like it. I think it would be a lot of work to create. But you're giving them, again, at the end instead, I think we all, it's like you give them a vocab quiz, or you give them something that they do with the vocabulary, but you don't ever actually go back and spend time so that the kids know that the vocabulary is as important, just as important. All right, SIOP and scaffolding. So in your textbook, if you have it, in the new book, we are on Feature 14. It's page 129 in the latest edition, so I'm assuming it's probably somewhere near that. We're going to go through it so you don't feel like you have to get it out, but if you want to label or mark it, and you can look in the contents. It's should be in chapter 5 and under strategies. Is the section over scaffolding. So as you build your lessons, one of the strategies that I know we use with all of our kids anyway, but with your L's, it may take a little bit different type of scaffolding to build them up. Because, again, they may have the academic background. They need to make the connection from the academic background to what it is that you're doing and building that vocabulary. So, scaffolding techniques consistently used in assisting supporting student understanding. That's what that whole feature number 14 talks about. And so we're going to talk about they use all these acronyms, the GRR, the gradual release, the gradual release of responsibility is the idea of the I do, we do, you do. And you know probably with a lot of your kids that the you do never amounts to much, or it might be they do it once and you hope that they've got it and you send them out the door because that's all the time you have for that particular content piece. With your L's, especially if you have a CWC or something like this, this is one of those opportunities you can use your parents or whoever your support is. Because we want to add, and we're going to take it from, I'll make sure I say this right. We do the I do and the you do. And then I help and respond. So now instead of letting them go on their own and kind of do the you do on your own, you're going to have them respond. Show me and respond. Do it and respond. And then, if they can show that they've mastered it, have them work with someone else. Because we know if they can teach someone else, they've mastered, or they can show mastery. But that's what that whole section is really going to cover. So, teacher-regulated, I do. You watch and respond. So, I'm going to work the math problem, or I'm going to create the thesis statement, or I'm going to do this. Okay? Teacher assisted, we do, and this is where we sometimes get stuck, is the we do, we do, we do, we do some more, right? You do together. If you have two people that don't get it, the you do together is not going to help anybody, right? It's the blind leading the blind. So this is where we have to push them out of their comfort zone. And then student regulated, you do independently. Again, sometimes our kids don't get there. And so we have to give them some additional strategies to use. So what are those strategies? I think we've all talked about using sentence frames, word banks, giving them the resources to create is so important. Okay? Paraphrasing, can they put it into their own words? I love, again, listening to the Kelvin when they're testing, and there's the one where they have to listen to the story and then they have to tell back what happened in the story. Some of them get very creative. You can tell that they've got a pretty good grasp on the language, and they want to kind of almost add to the story, and it makes me giggle sometimes. Reinforce, increase wait time. It's painful. And they'll stare at you just as long as you stare at them. Adults do it too, right? It's okay to tell them, I'm waiting. I'm giving you this is for you to process. Think about it. It's not just for us to sit here and stare at each other awkwardly. Okay? I will tell my kids, I'm waiting. You're thinking, I'm waiting. Don't feel rushed. I've had student teachers where I've had to physically go in and stand in the back of the room. Don't talk. I'm still counting, right? You're counting down for them. It's okay to show the kids. Put it up on the board. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. I'm going to give you a minute so that they know. Because it will seem like forever because they will stare at you, right? Slowing speech, pausing. You don't have to yell at them.
I have a question. Sorry, I was thinking about this question earlier with the whole slowing down in speech. Is it common for L's to talk louder when they're reading? So I do fast bridge testing with my 2 or 3 kids, and I think I've heard this kid say like 6 words, but every time he reads to me, I'm like, dude.
He reads loudly.
He yells at me.
I don't know. Again, maybe for enunciation purposes, somebody has probably said "huh" to him enough times that he's learned that he just needs to speak loud.
I have a kid that does that too. He's like yell reading. I'm like, it's okay. I'm ready.
Get excited.
Yeah, he does the same thing, but he doesn't talk very much.
I don't know. No, I don't. Generally speaking, I can't hear them. I have to say, look at me, speak. Okay. and they'll say it 3 or 4 times. I had one today. I said, write it down. I cannot understand what you're saying. And it was partly because there was enough noise in the class, and she speaks quietly, and and she's like, never mind. I'm like, no, I want to answer your question. I just can't hear you. And that's another problem with me. Background noise is really, I can't hear. And so I feel bad sometimes because I know they think I don't understand what they're saying, and it's not that I don't understand the words. I can't hear them. It's like your lips are moving, and that's all I can see. So, and I tell them, I'm like, guys, I am hard of hearing, so please don't think I am making fun of you. I am not, you can always ask. But no, for the loudness, I don't know. I've not had.
Because I know that sometimes we do that to them.
Yeah.
So I was thinking maybe he was doing that back to me.
It's entirely possible. Yep. Close reading, again, repeat for pronunciation. Correct pronunciation. Very important, because they don't want to say the word wrong either. They know, if you like to say, okay, you're good, and they want to say the word correctly. Because they're going to be teased if they say the word incorrectly, and you don't want them to be bashful about their reading. And it's really important too, I found, to make sure early on you establish those norms so the kids don't try to correct each other. Because when I'm the same way, when people correct me, I'm like, that's what I meant. You know what I meant, right? They don't want to read out loud when someone's correcting them all the time. And make sure, again, picking and choosing your battles. Eliciting more language and information. What do you mean? Can you explain that? Can you elaborate? Can you tell me about it? This is when my daughter was in like 3rd and 4th grade, or preschool, 3 and 4-year-old preschool. And she would bring home these pictures, and I was told very early on, you never ask what it is, because that's offending. That will offend them. You ask them to tell you about the picture. And so I think this applies, right? When the kids are trying to tell you something, and they're not getting it, so have them elaborate. Because sometimes they just need to keep talking. It's like writing. My AP kids were the same way. They, I would say, if you're lost, if you don't know what it is, just keep writing. Just keep writing, and these things will start clicking into place, and it's the same when they're talking. The more that they speak, they will eventually be able to tell you what they mean. Teach, model, practice, have them speak to each other, have them talk to each other, have them talk to you. I have one-on-ones for their assessments when we do assessments. So when we come to the end of a unit, we have an interview basically, and I have them come over and they can write out their interview questions, or answers. They know what I'm going to ask them. So whatever is the unit that we're talking about, we're just finishing up a unit on immigration, and they did a story called My Immigration Story. They had to do a presentation. Then they're going to have a one-on-one with me, and I'm going to ask them, where did you immigrate from? And they have to answer in a complete sentence. And I immigrated from Mexico. Why did you come to the United States? I came to the United States. And I always try and get them to say, be creative. You don't have to just repeat my answer or my question back to me. You can be creative with it. And some of them get really creative and add to it. Some of them just answer. But you're, again, just having them speak out loud and say the sentence, say the sentence in correct structure is huge. I have a very small class, so having them speak to each other, getting them to speak to different people in the class is hard because there just isn't very many of them. Explicit instruction and verbal. If you don't have a document camera, I would ask for one. It is the greatest thing. I use it way more than even my smartboard because I can write exactly what I want them to do. And I'm having them write when I write too, sometimes helps. I miss the old just overhead projectors that you write on because the kids paid attention. They were looking to see what you were writing. I think when you have with overhead projectors and PowerPoints, they read through it and they miss stuff and they're just filling in the blanks. So sometimes those explicit, having them written down and saying them and having them on the assignment sheet and having them repeat them back, all of those things are going to help them solidify that information. So, for example, manipulatives, I assume in middle school or in elementary school, it's probably a no-brainer. You probably use a lot more manipulatives. But even in the high school, this is an activity that my regular government kids do. They have, when we're talking about the principles of government, they get a folder, has 6 categories. They get 24 scenarios. They have to match up the scenario to the appropriate principle. We go through, we read all the scenarios out loud first. We look for any words that we don't know. We go through and we identify keywords, we mark the text, and then I turn them loose, because a lot of times matching things up, it's just a matter of finding the keywords. Read aloud, having them hear you read something correctly, and then having them repeat it. They can repeat it to each other. But again, just some good, in any setting, this is not just ESOL, right? These are good strategies for any class. I feel like this is kind of a different section. So, oh no, we're still talking about scaffolding, sorry. So, for having them talk to each other, this is kind of like, do you guys ever do the scavenger hunts on the first day? Find someone who has a dog, find someone who likes that, right? So this is sort of a variation on this. You're having these conversations, you're having them speak to one another. Who is the authority? Great vocabulary word for them to learn. So they have to be able to define authority. They have to know what authority is. So my answer, I would write out, in my house, my mom is the authority figure in my house. And then you have to go and you have to ask the other person, who is the authority figure in your house? And they would respond. And they don't have to write out their full answer, but you're having them use that language. Does everyone have equal rights? My answer, yes. Whoever. So you're learning about each other, but does everyone in your house have equal rights? They're reading, they're writing, they're listening, and they're speaking. I mean, this is going to address anytime you can have them communicating with each other and asking each other questions and answering those questions. You're hitting all the literacy objectives. And then down at the bottom, again, how is your family similar? You could have them build their own frequency chart. Not frequency chart. Why can I never remember the name of that thing? Sequencing chart. Nope. Semantic features analysis. Semantic chart. Sorry. Jeez. You could have them build. You could have them turn all this around and then have them go in and plus and minus all of these things. Okay. And for today, last but not least, this is just an example of scaffolding in a science class. Actually, the rest. If you guys want to, the rest are just examples. Scaffolding for English, scaffolding in science, higher order. Okay. We'll come back and we'll actually start with feature 11. We'll finish up feature 11 next class and then jump into the next chapter. Questions or concerns?
So just the lesson plans due next
And
Tuesday?
the discussion board.
And one discussion board out of myths. Chapter 5.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Does anybody have questions about the lesson plans?
I guess I just
I can actually answer them this week, I think, huh?
I guess I just want my feedback.
Okay, yes. I will get feedback to you guys as soon as possible. My goal, have it out to you guys tomorrow, Wednesday at the latest. Hopefully that gives you guys.
Did turn something that was like terrible and not what you were looking for, can we like redo it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because remember, the ultimate, the goal here is that when at the end when you do your presentation, you have that reflection. So if you want, yeah, I mean that would be a part of your reflection. I would do this differently. I would do this. So don't think of your assignment as being bad. The reflection is really giving you the opportunity to look back over. And what adjustments would you make? So I would definitely put that in your reflection. Like,
The reflection due at the same time of the lesson plan though?
if you've already done the lesson, that's fine. I don't need the reflection until you've done the lesson. So if you haven't done it yet,
No, I did the.
Yeah.
But you're good if we take a lesson, like a math lesson, let's say that I've already taught this week,
Sure.
and just turn it into
Yeah.
a lesson plan. That's good.
just makes your reflection a little more tricky if you haven't taught it the way that you actually lesson planned it for. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But again, it's more about looking back on how you would change it, adjust it, fix it. Is it great? Things that went well. Because you want to build, again, 4 times is obviously not enough to create a pattern. But the idea is that you would start incorporating these different steps into your lesson planning naturally. Yes. Yeah, I had every intention of grading these during conferences last week. And then I ended up
I just
in,
want to make sure I'm on the right track, I guess.
yep,